"You're lucky to have this job, sweetheart." Governor Richard Sterling's voice dripped with condescension as he looked down at the black woman refilling his coffee. "Most people like you don't have the discipline for much else." He smirked at his donor across the booth, expecting agreement. Expecting silence. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a single nickel, and dropped it. "There you go, sweetheart," Sterling said. "That's more your speed. Now pick it up." The diner went quiet. Elena looked at the coin on the floor. Then she looked at Sterling. And she smiled. It was 1:47 p.m. on a Thursday in late September. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly on the gravel parking lot of the Rusty Hub, a roadside diner that smelled of burnt coffee and broken dreams. It was the kind of place where deals got made under the table and everyone minded their own business. Moving between the tables with practiced exhaustion was a woman the regulars knew only as Lena. Hair pulled back in a sensible bun. Yellow apron stained with ketchup and regret. The kind of invisible service worker that powerful men talked right through like she was furniture. Every morning at 5 a.m., she tied that apron around her waist and became invisible. That afternoon, invisibility was about to become a liability. The black SUV pulled into the parking lot at exactly 1:28 p.m., kicking up dust and gravel like it owned the place. Elena watched through the window as Governor Richard Sterling stepped out, flanked by 2 security guards in cheap suits. Elena had been at the Rusty Hub for 56 days, and her feet still screamed by hour 3 of every shift. She refilled salt shakers that didn't need refilling. She smiled at men who didn't tip. She scrubbed grease from the grill that had been there since before she was born. Every morning at 5 a.m., she tied that yellow apron around her waist and became invisible. The other waitresses, Donna and Marie, had been kind at first. They showed her how to balance 4 plates on one arm and which customers to avoid. But they didn't ask questions. In a place like this, nobody asked questions. "Lena, table 6 needs water," Donna called from behind the counter. Elena grabbed the pitcher, her Pulitzer Prize-winning hands now calloused from carrying hot plates. She'd exposed corrupt senators. She'd taken down corporate criminals. She'd stood in war zones with a notebook and refused to blink. But none of that prepared her for the soul-crushing exhaustion of being treated like nothing. Yesterday, a man snapped his fingers at her like she was a dog. Last week, someone left a penny as a tip with a note that said, "Get a real job." Every day, she swallowed her pride and said, "Yes sir," and, "Right away ma'am," to people who wouldn't remember her face 5 minutes after leaving. This was the cost of the truth. This was what justice required. Elena wiped down table 6 and glanced at booth 7 in the back corner. The one she'd wired. The one where Sterling conducted his dirty business every Thursday at 1:30 p.m. She checked her watch. 1:15 p.m. 15 minutes until the governor arrived. 15 minutes until 8 weeks of invisible suffering finally meant something. Elena took a deep breath and straightened her apron. The story was about to begin. The black SUV pulled into the parking lot at exactly 1:28 p.m., kicking up dust and gravel like it owned the place. Elena watched through the window as Governor Richard Sterling stepped out, flanked by 2 security guards in cheap suits. He was wearing his "man of the people" outfit, khakis and a button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up. No tie. The kind of look his campaign manager probably focus tested. "There he is," Donna whispered, suddenly fixing her hair. "The governor actually eats here. Can you believe it?" Elena could believe it. She'd been tracking his Thursday visits for 2 months. Sterling pushed through the door like he was walking onto a stage. His smile was wide and practiced, the kind politicians wore in commercials. He waved at the cook. He shook hands with an old man at the counter. He laughed too loud at something that wasn't funny. "Afternoon, everyone," he announced to the half-empty diner. "Don't let me interrupt your meals. I'm just a regular guy grabbing lunch." Regular guys didn't arrive with security. Regular guys didn't have their picture on billboards across the state. But the customers ate it up. They smiled. They nodded. One woman even asked for a photo. Sterling graciously agreed, of course. He put his arm around her shoulder and flashed those perfect teeth. Then he spotted booth 7, his booth, and his expression shifted. Just for a second, the politician disappeared and the businessman appeared. Elena saw it. She always saw it. "Table's ready for you, Governor," Marie called out, practically glowing. Sterling nodded and headed toward the back, his security guards taking positions near the door and the restroom. Creating a bubble. Making sure nobody got too close to whatever was about to happen. Elena grabbed her notepad and took a deep breath. Showtime. 3 days earlier, Elena had arrived at the diner at 4:30 a.m., an hour before her shift started. The parking lot was empty except for the cook's beat-up Honda. The sun hadn't risen yet. Nobody would see her. Nobody would ask questions. She'd let herself in through the back door, the lock was broken, had been for weeks, and moved quickly through the dark kitchen. Her heart hammered against her ribs. One security camera covered the front counter, but the dining area had no coverage. The owner was too cheap for that. Booth 7 sat in the back corner, exactly where Sterling liked it. Private. Out of earshot from other tables. Perfect for conversations that shouldn't be heard. Elena slid into the worn vinyl seat and pulled out her equipment. A voice-activated recording device no bigger than a quarter. Military grade. The kind the FBI used in organized crime cases. Her editor had called in 3 favors to get it. She worked fast. Hands steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. She peeled back the duct tape holding the underside of the table together and pressed the device into the gap. It clicked into place, invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. Then came the backup. A second microphone tucked into the seam of the booth cushion. If Sterling swept the table for bugs, and men like him sometimes did, he'd miss the cushion. Elena tested the signal on her phone. 2 green dots appeared. Both devices were live and transmitting to the cloud server her team had set up. She checked her watch. 4:52 a.m. The cook would be coming through any minute. Elena smoothed down the tape, slid out of the booth, and wiped away any sign she'd been there. The trap was set. Now all she needed was for Sterling to walk into it. Elena approached booth 7 with a coffee pot in one hand and a notepad in the other. Sterling had been joined by a man in an expensive gray suit. Charles Wickham. Real estate developer. Billionaire. The kind of man who bought politicians the way normal people bought groceries. "Coffee, gentlemen?" Elena asked, her voice pleasant and forgettable. Sterling didn't even look up. "Obviously. And make sure it's hot this time. Last week's coffee was lukewarm garbage." Last week's coffee was fine. Elena had poured it herself. "Yes sir," she said quietly. She filled both cups, careful not to spill a drop. Her hands were steady. Years of high-pressure journalism had taught her how to stay calm when powerful men tried to make her feel small. "So as I was saying, Charles," Sterling continued, waving his hand dismissively as Elena stepped back, "the zoning approval is guaranteed. My people control the board." Wickham glanced at Elena, then lowered his voice. "Should we?" "Her." Sterling laughed, finally looking at Elena with eyes that saw right through her. "Don't worry about the help. She's not exactly Harvard material, are you, sweetheart?" Elena felt the familiar burn of rage in her chest. She'd graduated top of her class from Columbia. She'd won journalism's highest honor. She'd interviewed presidents and exposed criminals. But right now, she was nobody. "No sir," she said softly. "Can I get you anything else?" "Just stay out of the way," Sterling said, turning back to Wickham. "And try not to mess up the order this time. I know it's complicated, but I'll speak slowly. 2 eggs, scrambled. Bacon, crispy. Toast, wheat. Think you can handle that?" Wickham chuckled, enjoying the show. Elena wrote it down like her life depended on it. "Right away, Governor," she said. And beneath the table, the recording device captured every word. Elena stood at the coffee station, pretending to organize sugar packets while keeping booth 7 in her peripheral vision. Sterling leaned back in his seat, completely relaxed. A man who believed he was untouchable. "The Riverside Development Project," he said, his voice low but clear enough for the hidden microphones. $30 million in state infrastructure funds. Roads, sewers, electrical grid, all paid for by taxpayers. Wickham sipped his coffee. "And the contract goes to?" "Whoever I say it goes to." Sterling smiled like a shark. The bidding process is just theater. We already know who's going to win. And that would be Wickham Construction. Your company. Sterling paused. Assuming we have an understanding. Elena's pulse quickened. This was it. The moment she'd been waiting 56 days to capture. Wickham reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. Thick. White. Unsealed. He slid it across the table like they were sharing a menu. 200,000, Wickham said quietly. Cash. Untraceable. Just like you asked. Sterling picked up the envelope and looked inside without even trying to hide it. His fingers counted the bills quickly, professionally. A man who'd done this before. Pleasure doing business with you, Charles. Sterling tucked the envelope into his own jacket. You'll get the official notice next week. Make sure your bid comes in at 28 million. Leaves room for the usual administrative fees. Administrative fees. Wickham smiled. Right. They shook hands across the table. Two criminals pretending to be businessmen. Elena turned away and walked toward the kitchen, her legs shaking. She'd just witnessed a felony. Bribery. Corruption. Theft of public funds. And every single second was recorded in crystal clear audio. She pushed through the kitchen door and allowed herself one small smile. She had him. 40 minutes later, Elena cleared the plates from booth 7. Sterling had finished his eggs. Wickham had left through the back exit 10 minutes earlier, probably heading straight to his lawyer to start the fake bidding paperwork. Elena stacked the dishes carefully, professionally. The way she'd learned to do over 8 weeks of invisible labor. The bill, sir, she asked. Sterling pulled out his wallet, moving slowly like he was doing her a favor just by acknowledging her existence. He placed two $20 bills on the table. The meal cost $38. Keep the change, he said with a smirk. $2. For an hour of service. But Elena didn't react. She'd been tipped worse. Yesterday, someone left her 75 cents. Thank you, Governor, she said quietly, reaching for the bills. Sterling's hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. Not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to stop her. Firm enough to remind her who had the power. Actually, he said, pulling the bills back, I don't think you earned it. He dug into his pocket and pulled out a single nickel. 5 cents. He held it up between two fingers like it was a prize, making sure his security guards could see. Making sure everyone in the diner could witness this moment. Then he dropped it. The nickel hit the floor and rolled under the booth, spinning in small circles before settling near Elena's worn sneakers. There you go, sweetheart, Sterling said, his voice dripping with satisfaction. That's more your speed. Now pick it up. The diner went quiet. Even the cook stopped moving. Sterling leaned back and waited, expecting her to get on her knees. Expecting her to scramble for his nickel like a dog chasing scraps. Elena looked at the coin on the floor. Then she looked at Sterling. And she smiled. Elena stared at the nickel and her mind flashed back to a different moment. A different room. A different version of herself. 2 years ago. The grand ballroom of Columbia University. Crystal chandeliers. 1,000 people in formal wear. The Pulitzer Prize ceremony. For investigative reporting that exposed a multi-million-dollar conspiracy involving city officials, construction companies, and organized crime, the announcer had said, the Pulitzer Prize goes to Elena Martinez. She'd walked to that stage in a gown that cost more than a month's rent. Her editor was crying. Her mother was crying. Elena kept her composure until she held that medal in her hands, and then she'd allowed herself one single tear. The story had taken her 18 months. She'd gone undercover as a cleaning woman in City Hall, working night shifts while everyone else slept. She'd dug through trash bins and recorded conversations and followed paper trails that led to offshore bank accounts. 3 councilmen went to prison because of her work. $17 million in stolen taxpayer money was recovered. The mayor resigned in disgrace. And Elena became the youngest black woman to ever win journalism's highest honor. Before that, she'd exposed a pharmaceutical company selling contaminated medicine to hospitals. Before that, a police department running an illegal surveillance program targeting minority neighborhoods. Before that, a network of judges taking bribes to rig custody cases. She wasn't new to this. She wasn't some waitress who stumbled into something big. She was Elena Martinez. Pulitzer Prize winner. The journalist who made powerful people sweat. And right now, Governor Richard Sterling thought he could humiliate her with a nickel. Elena blinked, coming back to the present moment. Back to the diner. Back to the floor where Sterling's coin still lay. She bent down slowly. But she didn't pick up the nickel. She picked up her phone. Marcus Webb had been Sterling's chief of staff for 6 years, and he hadn't kept that job by being stupid. He stood near the restroom, scrolling through emails on his phone, when something caught his attention. The waitress. The black woman Sterling had just humiliated. She was crouched by the booth, but she wasn't picking up the nickel. She was holding her phone. At an angle. Like she was taking a picture. Marcus watched her stand up, slip the phone into her apron pocket, and walk toward the kitchen without the coin. Strange. Normal waitresses didn't ignore tips, even insulting ones. They took the money and complained about it later. They didn't photograph it and leave it on the floor. Marcus replayed the last hour in his mind. The woman had served their table 3 times. Each time, she'd positioned herself at specific angles. Each time, she'd stayed a few seconds longer than necessary, like she was listening. And her eyes. He'd caught her watching Sterling twice when she thought nobody was looking. Not the way starstruck locals watched him. Different. Focused. Calculating. "Boss," Marcus said, walking over to booth 7. "We need to go." Sterling looked up, annoyed. "I just ordered dessert." "Now, sir." Marcus kept his voice low. "Something's not right about that waitress." "What? The black girl?" Sterling laughed. "Marcus, you're being paranoid. She's nobody. Nobody doesn't act like that." Sterling's smile faded. He glanced toward the kitchen where Elena had disappeared. "You think she's—" "I think we should leave. Right now." For the first time that afternoon, Governor Richard Sterling looked uncertain. But it was already too late. Elena was scraping plates into the trash when the kitchen door swung open hard enough to hit the wall. Sterling walked in like he owned the place. Marcus followed close behind, blocking the exit. The cook looked up from the grill, then quickly looked down. Whatever this was, he wanted no part of it. "You," Sterling said, pointing at Elena. "We need to talk." Elena kept scraping. "I'm working, sir. If you need something, I can help you at your table." Cut the act. Sterling moved closer, invading her space. His cologne was expensive. His anger was cheap. "Who do you work for?" "The Rusty Hub Diner," Elena said calmly. "Minimum wage plus tips. Don't play games with me." Sterling's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "Marcus here thinks you've been watching us a little too closely. Taking pictures. Eavesdropping." Elena met his eyes. "I don't know what you're talking about, Governor. You got a phone on you?" "Everyone has a phone." "Show me." Elena pulled her phone from her apron pocket and held it out. Sterling snatched it from her hand and started scrolling through it. Marcus looked over his shoulder. Empty. No photos. No recordings. No contacts that mattered. Just a cheap burner phone with nothing on it. Because Elena wasn't stupid. The real evidence was uploading to a cloud server they'd never find. Sterling shoved the phone back at her. "You're fired. Effective immediately." Elena blinked. "On what grounds?" "I don't need grounds. I'm the governor. One call to your boss and you're done. Not just here, everywhere. I'll make sure you never work in this state again." The cook stopped cooking. The whole kitchen held its breath. Sterling leaned in close. "So here's what you're going to do. You're going to forget everything you saw today. You're going to walk out that door. And you're going to disappear." Elena smiled. "No," she said. Sterling's face went red. "Excuse me. I said no." Elena untied her apron slowly, deliberately. I'm not disappearing. And you can't fire me because I quit. She dropped the yellow apron on the counter and walked past Sterling toward the back door. Marcus moved to block her, but Sterling held up his hand. Let her go, the governor said. She's nobody. Just another waitress who couldn't handle the job. Elena pushed through the back door into the alley behind the diner. The afternoon sun hit her face. She took 3 steps, turned the corner, and pulled out a second phone from the waistband of her jeans. Her real phone. She opened the encrypted messaging app and typed 4 words, "The deal is confirmed." 3 dots appeared immediately. Her editor, David Chen, was waiting. David, audio quality. Elena, perfect. Every word. The bribe. The dollar amount. The contract details. David, you okay? Elena, he just threatened me in the kitchen. Marcus is suspicious. David, get out of there. Elena, not yet. I want to see his face when it all comes down. David, Elena. Elena, the FBI is already listening, right? David, they've had a live feed for the last 40 minutes. Agents are 10 minutes out. Elena felt her heart racing, but not from fear. From anticipation. From the sweet knowledge that justice was finally close enough to touch. She typed one more message, tell them to bring handcuffs. And make sure the police bodycams are rolling. I want every second of this on record. David, you're sure about this? Elena thought about the nickel still lying on the floor. She thought about 8 weeks of being invisible. She thought about every person Sterling had ever looked down on. Elena, I've never been more sure of anything in my life. She put the phone away and walked back inside. The final act was about to begin. Elena walked back through the kitchen and into the dining room. Sterling was already on his phone at booth 7, his voice loud and commanding. Sheriff Morrison. It's Richard Sterling. I need you at the Rusty Hub immediately. He paused, watching Elena cross the room. I'm being harassed by one of the staff here. Aggressive behavior. Possible theft. I want her arrested. Elena didn't stop walking. She moved behind the counter and started refilling coffee for the other customers like nothing had happened. Sterling's voice got louder. I don't care if you're busy. I'm the governor of this state, and I'm asking for assistance. Get here now. He hung up and pointed at Elena. You should have left when you had the chance. Donna touched Elena's arm. Lena, what's going on? What did you do? Nothing, Elena said quietly. Just my job. The governor says you stole from him. The governor is lying. Donna's eyes went wide. You can't say that. I know who he is. 10 minutes later, a sheriff's cruiser pulled into the parking lot, lights flashing. Sheriff Tom Morrison stepped out, adjusting his belt. He'd been sheriff for 12 years, elected 3 times with Sterling's endorsement each time. He walked into the diner and immediately spotted the governor. Tom, thank God. Sterling stood up, playing the victim perfectly. That woman behind the counter. She's been acting strange all day. Watching me. Taking pictures. I think she might be working for one of my political opponents. Morrison looked at Elena. She stood perfectly still, hands visible, no threat to anyone. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step outside, Morrison said. On what charges? Elena asked. Harassment. Possible stalking. The governor feels threatened. Elena almost laughed. The governor feels threatened by a waitress. Let's go. Now. Elena raised her hands slowly, making no sudden movements. I'll cooperate, Sheriff. But as Morrison reached for his handcuffs, more vehicles pulled into the parking lot. Not just 1 or 2. 6. 7. 8 cruisers, all with lights flashing red and blue against the diner's windows. Sterling looked confused. Tom, what's going on? I only called you. Morrison's radio crackled to life. All units, secure the perimeter. Nobody in or out. The sheriff's face went pale. He pressed his radio. Dispatch, what's happening? I didn't call for backup. Orders from the state police, sheriff. Federal agents are en route. You're to secure the scene and wait for their arrival. Sterling stood up fast, knocking his water glass over. Federal agents? For what? 2 deputies entered through the front door. Another came through the back. They weren't looking at Elena anymore. They were looking at everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, one deputy announced, we need everyone except staff to exit the building immediately. This is now an active investigation scene. The customers started murmuring. Confused. Scared. The old man at the counter grabbed his coat. The couple in booth 3 left money on their table and hurried out. Donna grabbed Elena's hand. What's happening? Lena, are you in trouble? No, Elena said softly. But someone is. Marcus appeared at Sterling's side, whispering urgently. The governor's face had lost all its color. His confidence was cracking like thin ice. This is a mistake, Sterling said to Morrison. I'm the governor. I'm the one who called you here. Sir, I'm going to need you to remain calm and stay where you are. Stay where I am. Do you know who I am? Morrison's hand moved to his weapon. Yes, sir. I do. Outside, 3 black SUVs pulled up. The FBI had arrived. Sheriff Morrison tapped the camera mounted on his chest. The small red light blinked on. Bodycam activated, he said into his radio. Time is 2:47 p.m. Every officer in the diner did the same. 8 cameras. 8 angles. 8 digital witnesses that couldn't be intimidated or bribed or made to forget. Sterling had championed the Bodycam program 2 years ago. Transparency in law enforcement, he'd called it during his press conference. So the truth is always on record. Now that truth was about to destroy him. Morrison approached Elena slowly, his hand still near his weapon. He looked uncomfortable. Like he knew something was wrong but couldn't figure out what. Ma'am, I need you to turn around and place your hands behind your back. Elena didn't move. Sheriff Morrison, before you make a mistake you can't take back, I need to tell you something. Ma'am, please comply. My name isn't Lena. Elena's voice was calm, clear, projecting so every bodycam would catch it. My name is Elena Martinez. I'm an investigative journalist with the Associated Press. I've been working undercover at this diner for 8 weeks. Morrison froze. What? Sterling's voice cut through the room. She's lying. She's just trying to. I have press credentials in my back pocket, Elena continued, speaking directly to Morrison's camera. I have documentation proving my identity. And for the past 2 months, I've been investigating corruption at the highest levels of state government. The diner went silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. Morrison's hand dropped away from his weapon. You're a reporter. Pulitzer Prize winner, actually. Elena turned slowly so the camera could see her face clearly. And Governor Sterling just accepted a $200,000 bribe in booth 7. Every word is on tape. Sterling's legs seemed to give out. He sat down hard. Sterling shot to his feet, his face twisted with rage. This is absurd. You can't possibly believe this woman. Look at her. Morrison held up his hand. Governor, please. She's a waitress. A nobody. Sterling pointed at Elena like she was dirt on his shoe. She's been serving coffee for 2 months and suddenly she's an investigative journalist. She probably can't even spell journalist. Every word was being recorded. Every body cam in the room captured his fury. Sir, I need you to calm down, Morrison said. But Sterling couldn't stop. 8 weeks of treating Elena like she was invisible had made him forget she was human. Now his mask was completely off. Do you know what people like her do, Tom? They make up stories. They lie to get attention. She probably heard me talking about business and created some fantasy in her little head about bringing down the governor. Marcus grabbed Sterling's arm. Richard, stop talking. Sterling shook him off. No. I've dealt with her type my whole career. Entitled. Always playing the victim. Always claiming discrimination when they don't get their way. Elena stood perfectly still, letting him speak. letting him bury himself deeper with every word. She's too stupid to be a real journalist, Sterling continued, his voice getting louder. Real journalists went to good schools. They have credentials. They don't spend 2 months scrubbing toilets and messing up coffee orders. One of the deputies shifted uncomfortably. Another looked at the floor. Morrison's bodycam recorded it all. The condescension. The racism is barely hidden behind political language. The absolute certainty that someone like Elena could never be important enough to threaten someone like him. Are you finished, Governor? Elena asked quietly. Sterling glared at her with pure hatred. I'm just getting started. Elena reached slowly into her back pocket. Every officer in the room tensed, hands moving toward their weapons. I'm retrieving my identification, she said clearly, for the cameras. No sudden movements. She pulled out a laminated press badge and held it up. The Associated Press logo gleamed under the fluorescent lights. Her photo. Her real name. Her credentials. Sheriff Morrison stepped forward and examined it carefully. His expression changed as he read. Elena Martinez, he said aloud. Senior Investigative Correspondent. Pulitzer Prize, 2023. Sterling laughed, but it sounded hollow. That could be fake. Anyone can make a fake ID. Elena reached into her other pocket and pulled out her phone, her real phone this time. She scrolled to a saved screenshot and held it up for Morrison to see. It was on the front page of the New York Times from 2 years ago. The headline read, Martinez wins Pulitzer for exposing municipal corruption. Below it was a photo of Elena in an evening gown, holding her medal, smiling at the camera. The same face that had just been called too stupid to be a real journalist. Morrison looked from the phone to Elena's face and back again. It's her. This is ridiculous, Sterling sputtered. Tom, I'm ordering you to. You don't give me orders anymore, sir. Morrison's voice had changed. Harder now. Professional. Not in the middle of a federal investigation. The front door opened and 3 people in dark suits entered. FBI. The lead agent, a woman in her 50s with gray hair and sharp eyes, scanned the room and immediately focused on Elena. Ms. Martinez? Agent Reeves, Elena said, recognizing her from their video calls. Perfect timing. Reeves turned to Sterling. Governor Richard Sterling, you need to come with us. Sterling's world was collapsing in real time. And every second was on camera. Sterling found his voice again, desperation replacing arrogance. This is entrapment. Whatever she thinks she has, it won't hold up in court. I was having a private conversation in a public diner. Agent Reeves smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. Actually, Governor, you were committing multiple federal crimes in a location that had been legally wired for surveillance. Wired? Sterling's eyes darted to booth 7. You can't, that's illegal without a warrant. We had a warrant, Reeves said. Signed by a federal judge 3 weeks ago. Based on preliminary evidence provided by Ms. Martinez showing a pattern of corruption. Elena spoke up, her voice steady and clear. The booth you were sitting in has been equipped with voice-activated recording devices since September 15th. Every conversation you've had there for the past 3 weeks has been recorded and uploaded in real time to a secure Department of Justice server. Sterling's face went white. That's, how many meetings? 4, Elena said. Today's meeting with Charles Wickham regarding the Riverside development was the 4th we recorded. But it was the most damning. $200,000 in exchange for a $30 million state contract. Your words, Governor. Whoever I say it goes to. Marcus slumped against the wall, his head in his hands. The audio files were transmitted to the DOJ, the FBI, and my editor at the Associated Press simultaneously, Elena continued. By the time you threw that nickel on the floor and told me to pick it up, federal prosecutors were already drafting your indictment. Sterling looked at the booth like it had betrayed him. His sanctuary. His private office. The place where he'd felt safe enough to be exactly who he was. You set me up, he whispered. No, Elena corrected. You set yourself up. I just made sure everyone could hear it. Agent Reeves tapped her earpiece. Subject 1 is secured. What's the status of Subject 2? A voice crackled back. Still at large. Last seen leaving through the rear exit at 2:15. Charles Wickham left 40 minutes ago, Elena said. Black Mercedes. License plate November Kilo 7423. Reeves spoke into her radio. All units, be advised. Black Mercedes, plate November Kilo 7423. The subject is a white male, late 50s, gray suit. Considered a flight risk. Copy that. We have a vehicle matching that description on Route 9, heading north toward the state line. Intercept and detain. Sterling let out a bitter laugh. Charles is smarter than you think. He'll be in his private jet before you even. His jet is grounded, Reeves interrupted. The FAA issued a no-fly order 20 minutes ago. His pilot has already been questioned. The color drained from Sterling's face completely. We've also frozen his bank accounts, Elena added. Domestic and offshore. The $200,000 he gave you. That money is marked. We know exactly where it came from and where it's going. Reeves's radio crackled again. Units in pursuit. Subject 2 is refusing to stop. High-speed chase in progress. Everyone in the diner listened to the radio chatter. The chase lasted 3 minutes. Then a new voice came through. Subject 2 is stopped. Vehicle disabled with spike strips. The subject is attempting to flee on foot. A pause. Subject apprehended. He's asking for his lawyer. Reeves nodded with satisfaction. They always do. She turned to Sterling, who looked like he might be sick. Governor Charles Wickham is in custody. The bribe money is in evidence. Your conversation is on tape. And you just spent the last 10 minutes verbally abusing a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist on 8 different bodycams. Sterling said nothing. There was nothing left to say. Agent Reeves nodded to Sheriff Morrison. He's all yours, Sheriff. Morrison pulled out his handcuffs, the metal gleaming under the diner lights. The same handcuffs he'd planned to use on Elena 20 minutes ago. Governor Richard Sterling, Morrison said, his voice formal and steady, you are under arrest. Sterling backed away, bumping into booth 7. Tom, you can't do this. I appointed half the judges in this state. I got you elected. Remember that? Remember who paid for your campaign? Morrison's jaw tightened. Turn around and place your hands behind your back. I'm the governor. You can't. You have the right to remain silent. Morrison stepped forward, professional and unstoppable. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. This is a mistake. When my lawyers. You have the right to an attorney. Morrison grabbed Sterling's arm and spun him around, pressing him against the booth. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided for you. The handcuffs clicked into place. The sound echoed through the silent diner. Sterling's expensive watch pressed against the vinyl seat where he'd sat so many times before. Where he'd made deals and counted bribes and felt untouchable. Do you understand these rights as I have read them to you? Morrison asked. Sterling said nothing. His whole body was shaking. Morrison pulled him upright and started walking him toward the door. Every step was captured on a body cam. The governor of the state, hands cuffed behind his back, being led out by the sheriff he'd once controlled. As they passed Elena, Sterling stopped and looked at her. Really looked at her for the first time. You ruined me, he said quietly. Elena met his eyes without flinching. No, Governor, she said. You ruined yourself. I just made sure people knew about it. 72 hours later, Elena sat in her real apartment, drinking coffee that didn't taste like burnt regret. Her phone buzzed every 30 seconds. Interview requests. Award nominations. Job offers from networks who'd ignored her emails 6 months ago. She ignored them all and opened her laptop. The New York Times homepage loaded. Her story was there, above the fold, exactly where it belonged. Governor arrested in massive corruption sting, Pulitzer winner goes undercover as waitress to expose pay-to-play scheme. Below the headline was a photo. Elena in her yellow apron, standing in the rusty hub, holding up her press credentials. The image had gone viral within hours. Every major news channel was running the story. CNN. MSNBC. Fox News. Even international outlets picked it up. The BBC called it one of the most dramatic undercover investigations in modern journalism. Her editor, David, had called it the story of the decade. Elena scrolled through the article. Her article. 8 weeks of invisible labor condensed into 3,000 words of truth. Governor Sterling was in federal custody, denied bail. Charles Wickham was negotiating a plea deal. 3 other state officials had resigned before the investigation could reach them. The entire political structure of the state was collapsing. And Elena's face was everywhere. Not as a waitress. Not as the help. Not as someone to ignore or insult or throw nickels at. As Elena Martinez. Journalist. Truth teller. The woman who brought down a governor. Her phone rang. A number she recognized. The Pulitzer Committee. She answered. Ms. Martinez, we'd like to discuss this year's nominations. We believe your recent work demonstrates exactly the kind of investigative courage and public service that. Elena smiled. She'd done it again. Elena pulled into the Rusty Hub's gravel parking lot 1 week after Sterling's arrest. The diner looked different in the morning light. Smaller somehow. Less threatening. Just a roadside restaurant where people ate breakfast and minded their own business. She walked through the door and heard the familiar bell chime. Donna looked up from behind the counter and froze. Elena. Donna's eyes were wide. I saw you on TV. I can't believe, all this time you were. Just doing my job, Elena said with a smile. The cook, Marcus, not the governor's aide, a different Marcus, poked his head out from the kitchen. He was 60 years old with hands scarred from decades of hot grills and sharp knives. The famous journalist, he said, wiping his hands on his apron. You want your old booth back? Elena laughed. No thanks. I'm done with that booth. She walked to the counter and pulled out an envelope. Inside was $5,000 in cash. What's this? Marcus asked. You never asked questions, Elena said. When I showed up early. When I stayed late. When I needed the back door left unlocked. You just kept cooking and kept quiet. Marcus stared at the money. I can't take this. Yes, you can. You helped bring down a corrupt governor. That's worth more than $5,000, but it's what I can afford right now. Marcus's eyes filled with tears. He nodded and took the envelope. Elena reached into her pocket one more time and pulled out a nickel. Sterling's nickel. The one she'd photographed but never picked up. She placed it on the counter. For the collection jar, she said. Every penny counts. Then she walked out of the Rusty Hub for the last time, leaving the diner behind but taking the story with her. Justice had been served. And Elena Martinez was just getting started. Subscribe for more interesting stories.